My name is Serena, and I'm 27 years old. The day I saw my stepbrother on national TV, taking credit for the fashion brand I built with my own hands, something inside me broke. He stole my dream, my name, and the years I'd poured into it. Everyone called him a genius. No one knew the truth. But I made myself one quiet promise that night. Someday, he'd answer to me. And years later, he did. I've always been a dreamer, but not the kind who just talks about dreams. I'm the kind who sketches them into reality. Ever since I was little, I was obsessed with fabrics, textures, and the quiet magic of creating something out of nothing. While other kids spent their weekends watching movies, I was at thrift stores, scavenging through piles of discarded clothes, imagining how I could bring them back to life. Growing up, it was just my mom and me. She worked double shifts as a nurse, so I learned early how to be independent. We didn't have much, but she taught me that anything made with heart and effort had value. When she remarried, I was 15. I remember standing in the church, wearing a dress I had altered myself when I first met Nathan, my new stepbrother. He smiled at me that day, all confident charm and smooth words. He was 16, tall, good-looking, and already seemed to know how to make everyone like him. My mother adored him instantly, and my new stepfather never stopped bragging about his gifted son. I wanted to believe we'd become real siblings, but even back then, I saw something behind his perfect smile, a glimmer of arrogance, a hunger for admiration that went deeper than ambition. Over the years, that hunger became clear. Nathan was clever, yes, but he was lazy. He was the kind of person who could talk his way out of anything, who could spin someone else's hard work into his own version of success. Meanwhile, I spent every spare moment in my room with a needle in my hand or a sketchbook on my lap, building my dream piece by piece. When I got into a top design program in college, I thought it was the beginning of everything I'd worked for. I wanted to create a fashion brand that was ethical, sustainable, and meaningful. A brand that told real stories through clothing. I called the concept Eterna. The name came from my belief that creativity, when born from passion, never dies. I remember the nights I stayed up till 3 a.m. sewing by hand, my fingers raw but my heart alive. I sold small batches online, modeling the clothes myself in photos my roommate took with a cracked phone camera. Every sale felt like proof that my dream wasn't crazy. Nathan would occasionally check in, pretending to be impressed. "You're really doing this, huh?" he'd say, half smirking. Cute little hobby. I'd laugh it off, but deep down, those words hurt. He didn't see the vision. He didn't understand what it meant to me. My mother and stepfather didn't either. They'd gush about Nathan's business, school grades, and his potential, while I quietly stitched my hopes into fabric. Still, I believed in family. I believed that sharing your passion with someone close was a sign of trust, not risk. So one night, over dinner, I told Nathan about my future plans, how I wanted to pitch my brand to investors after graduation, how I'd been researching materials, marketing strategies, and production partnerships. He listened, asked smart questions, even offered to help me refine my pitch. I thought, for once, he cared. A few months later, after graduation, I was scrolling through my social media feed when something made my stomach drop. There, on a business news site, was Nathan's smiling face, standing beside a logo that looked eerily familiar. My logo, my font, my tagline. "Eterna, the future of sustainable fashion," the headline read. My chest tightened as I clicked the article. Every word, every design concept, even the story behind the brand. It was mine. The sketches I'd shown him, the samples I'd left at home, the marketing lines I'd written in my notebook, it was all there, under his name. I called him immediately. He didn't answer. I called my mother next, shaking, furious, ready to scream. But when she picked up, her tone was calm, almost cheerful. "Isn't it wonderful?" she said. "Nathan's business idea got picked up by investors. You should be proud of him." Proud? I couldn't even breathe. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen, watching a video of him giving an interview about his passion for sustainable fashion. My passion. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by sketches and fabric that suddenly felt meaningless. Years of hard work, gone. I had trusted him completely. I had believed that being family meant something, but I was wrong, and the worst part? Everyone believed it was his idea, even my mother. Watching someone else live your dream is worse than losing it. Losing it means it's gone, final, something you can grieve. But watching someone else flaunt what you built, hearing strangers applaud them for your creation, is a slow kind of torture that eats away at your sense of self. In the days after Nathan's launch, I walked around like a ghost. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, articles, tags, congratulations from old classmates who hadn't spoken to me in years. Your stepbrother is incredible. Did you see what Nathan's doing? You must be so proud. I couldn't respond. Every message was a knife twisted deeper. Everywhere I looked, his face was there. Magazines, fashion blogs, glossy interviews. The media called him a visionary entrepreneur revolutionizing sustainable fashion. I read those words until they blurred. They weren't describing Nathan. They were describing me. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror one morning, staring at myself with swollen eyes after another sleepless night. I barely recognized the woman in the reflection, someone defeated, hollow. I had poured years of work, heart, and identity into that brand. And now the world thought it belonged to him. At first I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe he'd give me credit later. Maybe he'd clear the misunderstanding. I still wanted to believe there was some trace of decency in him. But when I finally gathered the courage to confront him, the last bit of hope inside me died. I went to his office, a sleek downtown space, buzzing with interns wearing my designs. My designs. The receptionist greeted me like I was some fan. I waited for nearly an hour before Nathan strolled out, all smiles, like I hadn't just been erased from my own dream. He looked me up and down and said, "Serena, what are you doing here?" I held out one of his new press kits, the one plastered with my sketches. "You know exactly why I'm here." For a moment, he pretended to look confused. Then he laughed, an easy, careless laugh that made my stomach twist. "Oh, that. You mean the designs? That's business, Serena. You had ideas. I had execution." "Execution?" I said through clenched teeth. "You had me. You had access to my files, my drafts." He cut me off. "Relax. You were never going to do anything with them anyway." I just made it real. That's when I realized what he truly thought of me. Not as family, not even as competition, but as someone small. Someone he could use and step over without consequence. When I told my mother what happened, she sighed, her tone heavy with that familiar mix of weariness and denial. "Oh, Serena, please don't make drama out of this. Nathan's success helps the family. You should be happy for him." Happy for him. I wanted to scream. She couldn't see the betrayal because she didn't want to. To her, I was emotional. To Nathan, I was naive. It felt like the entire world was gaslighting me into silence. I spent the next few weeks gathering everything: my notebooks, old prototypes, digital files, dated social posts, anything that could prove Eterna was mine. But when I met with a lawyer, she shook her head. "He's already filed the trademarks, Serena. He owns the name, the branding, everything." It would be a long, expensive battle. I walked out of her office trembling. The city felt colder that night. I took the subway home, clutching my sketchbook like it was the only piece of me I still owned. Depression came quietly after that. I stopped sketching, stopped creating. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if maybe Nathan was right. Maybe I wasn't meant to make it. Maybe I was just a dreamer, destined to be forgotten. Weeks passed like that. Until one evening, scrolling through social media, I stumbled on a small post from a young designer sharing her story about being copied by a major brand. She wrote, "They can steal your idea, but they can't steal your passion." Something in that line struck me hard. I closed my phone and sat in silence for a long time, tears burning behind my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain, something small, fragile, but alive: determination. If Nathan could steal my dream once, it meant it was powerful enough to be worth stealing. And if I built it once, I could build it again, stronger, smarter, unbreakable. That night, I pulled out my sketchbook, opened to a blank page, and began to draw again. My hands trembled, but the lines came back, just like they used to. I realized then that what Nathan took wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one. And that night, I decided I'd stop being his victim and start being his competition. I had no money, no investors, and no one believed in me. But I had my fire back. When I decided to start over, I didn't have much. Just a stubborn belief that I couldn't let Nathan be the end of my story. My apartment was small, barely big enough for me, and a few boxes of old fabric, but it became my new headquarters. I pushed my bed against the wall to clear out a corner, dragged in a wobbly table, and told myself, this is where I'll rebuild my dream. I sold nearly everything that wasn't essential. My clothes, old jewelry, even the fancy heels I'd once bought for interviews that never came. With that money, I bought a used sewing machine from a thrift store. It rattled and coughed like it was on its last breath, but it worked. The first night I set it up, I sat cross-legged on the floor, listening to its hum as I stitched scraps of leftover fabric together. It felt like breathing again. I didn't have investors or glossy materials, but what I had this time was heart, raw, unfiltered heart. I started redesigning everything from memory, refusing to look back at the stolen work. If Nathan had taken my old vision, I'd build something new, something deeper, something that no one could fake. I worked every day, sunrise to midnight, sketching, cutting, sewing. My hands were blistered, and my apartment was covered in threads, but it was my chaos, my rebirth. And I made one silent promise to myself: no one will ever take what's mine again. This time, I learned from every mistake. I saved every receipt, every sketch, every digital file. I registered my new work immediately, time-stamped every design, even filmed myself during the creative process. I'd been naive once, never again. When I finally had a small collection ready, I realized I couldn't afford professional marketing, but maybe I didn't need it. I grabbed my phone, taped it to a stack of books, and started recording behind-the-scenes clips. Me cutting fabric, sewing seams, burning my fingers on the iron, but smiling through it. I didn't pretend to be perfect, I just showed the truth. I created a new brand name, Serene Made. Simple, personal, real. I launched an Instagram account, posted my first video with the caption, "Made by hand, made by heart." At first, nothing happened. A few likes, a couple of polite comments. But I kept posting. Every night, I shared a new clip or a story about what inspired a piece. Slowly, people started to respond. They loved the honesty, the imperfection. They saw me. Then one day, I got a message from a woman named Alicia, a freelance photographer. She wrote, "Your work has soul. Let me help you show it." I hesitated. I didn't have money to pay anyone. I told her the truth, expecting her to walk away, but she just laughed. "I'm not in it for money," she said. "I just want to create something real." The following weekend, we met at a local park with a few of my handmade dresses and a borrowed camera. The shoot wasn't polished. Wind tangled the fabric, sunlight shifted unpredictably, but it was alive. Alicia captured moments of laughter, imperfection, authenticity. When we posted those photos, everything changed. People started commenting things like, "This feels human," and "You can see the emotion in every stitch." Orders began trickling in. Small at first, but steady. One sale turned into 5, 5 into 10. Each notification made me tear up a little. After months of feeling invisible, people were finally seeing me again. Alicia became my closest collaborator, and together we built something that wasn't just about clothes. It was about connection. We created short clips showing real women wearing my designs, talking about confidence and self-worth. It wasn't marketing, it was storytelling. Soon, Serene Made gained traction online. A few eco-fashion blogs featured my work, calling it honest sustainability. For the first time in years, I felt proud again. But with success came the shadow I feared most, Nathan. At first, I noticed subtle things. One of my followers tagged me in a comment under his brand's page, asking, "Didn't Serena make something similar?" I clicked, and my heart sank. There it was, a near-identical version of my new design. The same cut, the same concept, just under his company's name. At first, I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was overreacting. But then it happened again. Another piece, another copy. 2 weeks later, I opened his website, and staring back at me was my latest design. replicated down to the stitching pattern. My stomach twisted with anger and disbelief. It wasn't a coincidence. Nathan was watching me, copying me again, stealing the second version of my dream, just as he had the first. And in that moment, something in me hardened. When I saw my latest design on his website 2 weeks later, I knew this was war. He could steal my ideas, but he couldn't steal my spirit. When I saw Nathan's company releasing my latest design, I knew I was in for another fight. But this time, I wasn't that naive girl who trusted him. I was sharper now, strategic. I'd learned how to protect myself, and I wasn't going to let him walk all over me again. Within weeks, his team flooded the market with identical versions of my new styles, cheaper materials, faster production, flashy packaging. He had the money, the connections, the resources. I had only my determination. But sometimes determination burns brighter than all the money in the world. It didn't take long for the confusion to start. My followers began messaging me, saying they saw my clothes on his website. Others accused me of being the copycat. Trolls filled my comment section with cruel words, calling me a fraud, a knockoff artist, desperate for attention. It felt like déjà vu. Every hateful comment cut deep, reopening the old wounds I'd worked so hard to heal. But this time, I refused to crumble. I reminded myself that truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand long enough to be seen. Instead of reacting with anger, I got methodical. I started documenting everything. Dates of my posts, timestamps on my files, every tiny piece of evidence showing I created my designs first. Alicia helped me organize everything into folders. We even started screen recording Nathan's updates in real time, just to prove how quickly he mimicked my work. But I didn't want my brand to become defined by a feud. I didn't want to spend my life chasing after his lies. So I made a choice. Instead of fighting him directly, I'd show people the truth through authenticity. Every post I made after that carried a message, not just about fashion, but about integrity, creativity, and resilience. I started sharing small behind-the-scenes videos of my process, how I chose fabrics, how I hand-stitched every detail, how sometimes I failed and started over. I wanted people to see that Serenmade wasn't about perfection, it was about passion. Alicia took things to the next level. "Let's film the process," she said one morning. "People need to see the difference between you and him." So we did. She filmed me cutting patterns on my living room floor, my cat wandering through the frame, my sewing machine stuttering as I adjusted tension. We added captions like "Real work takes time," and "Originality can't be rushed." When we posted those clips, something shifted. People started commenting differently. They saw my authenticity, the sweat, the imperfections, the soul. And they started to notice that Nathan's brand didn't have that. His photos looked sterile, his models detached, his story too polished to be real. Within weeks, I noticed the tide turning. Followers began defending me online, calling out the similarities between our collections. "Serena posted that design 3 weeks before his launch," someone wrote under a viral thread. Others began investigating his company history, and cracks started to appear in his image of perfection. It was subtle at first, a few skeptical comments under his posts, questions about originality, but then the murmurs grew louder. People wanted to know who the real creator was. One night, as I was editing photos for a new drop, I got a message request from someone I didn't recognize. The username looked familiar. Maya from Within. I opened it cautiously. "Hi, Serena," the message began. "I used to work for Nathan's company. I saw everything that happened, and I think you deserve to know the truth." My heart pounded as I scrolled through the long paragraph that followed. She explained how she'd been part of Nathan's marketing team during his brand's early days, how she'd watched him take credit for work done by others, silence designers who questioned him, and manipulate the narrative to make himself look like a genius. But that wasn't all. She attached files, emails, contracts, invoices, the kind of things that could change everything. One file showed that Nathan hadn't even designed his own website. He'd hired a freelancer who built it using stolen concepts and plagiarized visuals, mine included. Another document revealed that some of his exclusive designs were bought in bulk from generic manufacturers overseas. As I read through each file, a mixture of fury and vindication coursed through me. It was all there. Proof that Nathan's empire was a facade built on lies, theft, and manipulation. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen, my heart racing. I could almost hear the hum of that old sewing machine in the corner, a reminder of where I came from and how far I'd climbed back. The evidence sitting in front of me wasn't just powerful, it was explosive. The files she sent me would not only expose him, they could destroy his entire company. I had everything I needed to take him down, but I had to decide how far I'd go. The files Maya sent me sat in a folder on my laptop like a live grenade. I opened them over and over, rereading the evidence until my eyes burned. Invoices, stolen drafts, internal messages, all of it laid out the truth I'd always known but could never prove. There were emails from Nathan to manufacturers using my original sketches as blueprints. There were text threads where he told his assistant to make it look like his. He hadn't even bothered to hide it. For a long time, I just sat there in silence, staring at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. I thought about the years I'd spent building Eterna from nothing, about the humiliation of seeing him parade my dream as his own. I thought about how easily he'd dismiss me, how no one had believed me, not even my mother. Now, I finally had the power to make the world see the truth. But power is dangerous. It asks you who you really are. Part of me wanted revenge, to destroy him the way he'd destroyed me, but another part, quieter and stronger, wanted justice. I didn't want to become like him. I wanted to win the right way. So I did something that surprised even me. Instead of leaking everything online, I reached out to an attorney who specialized in intellectual property law. Her name was Vanessa Clark, and she listened patiently as I explained everything. Every betrayal, every stolen design, every sleepless night. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You've got enough to bury him legally, Serena. But this won't be quick. It'll be messy. Are you ready for that?" I nodded. I've been ready since the day he stole my dream. We began by filing official complaints: copyright infringement, fraud, misuse of creative property. Vanessa guided me through each form, making sure every document was airtight. Then, on her advice, I shared just enough of the truth publicly to make people pay attention. That night, I posted a short statement on Serene Made's social media. Authenticity matters. Every design I've made has been my own. When others copy your work, it says more about their lack of vision than your worth. I stand by my craft, and I have the proof. No names, no accusations, just conviction. Within hours, the internet exploded. People connected the dots immediately. Fashion journalists began digging, comparing our collections side by side. Fans who had once been neutral started defending me fiercely. Threads went viral. Videos popped up, analyzing timelines, and suddenly the world saw what I had seen all along. I was no longer the quiet girl who had been robbed. I was the designer who fought back. The shift was unbelievable. My follower count doubled overnight. Serene Made's online store nearly crashed from the flood of orders. Journalists wanted interviews. Brands wanted collaborations. The underdog narrative took on a life of its own. People didn't just buy my clothes. They bought my story. Meanwhile, Nathan's empire began to crack. His investors panicked as whispers of lawsuits spread. Some pulled funding, others distanced themselves entirely. He went silent on social media. His company's posts were flooded with comments calling him a fraud. For the first time, I felt something close to peace. Justice was moving, slowly but surely. I didn't have to scream anymore. The truth was doing that for me. But peace never lasts long when it comes to Nathan. It was late one evening when I heard the knock on my door. Loud, impatient. I knew before I opened it who it was. Nathan stood there, eyes blazing, a mix of anger and desperation written across his face. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he snapped as he pushed his way inside. "You've ruined everything. The company, the investors. Mom's furious. You've embarrassed the entire family." I crossed my arms, staying calm. "No, Nathan. You ruined everything when you stole from me." He sneered, pacing like a caged animal. "You think this makes you better than me? You think this little truth crusade means you win? I built something you never could. You'll regret this, Serena. I'll destroy you before I let you take me down." I didn't flinch. There was a time his words would have shattered me, but not anymore. I met his glare and said quietly, "You already tried to destroy me, Nathan. And look at me now." He froze for a second, maybe expecting tears, maybe expecting fear. But all he saw was a woman who'd rebuilt herself from ashes and was now stronger than he'd ever been. I took a step closer, my voice steady. "You still don't get it, do you? This was never about revenge. It's about accountability. One day, you'll answer for what you did. And when that day comes..." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "You're going to work for me." His jaw tightened. "What did you just say?" I smiled faintly. "You heard me. You're going to work for me one day." He laughed then, a hollow sound, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. But deep down, I knew it wasn't an empty promise. It was prophecy. Because I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. Every scar I carried became part of my strength. Months passed after the confrontation with Nathan, and little by little my world began to shift. The chaos that had once surrounded me turned into clarity. Serene Maid wasn't just a brand anymore. It had become a movement. What started as a small online store run from the corner of my apartment grew into something much bigger. People connected not only to the clothes, but to the story behind them. They saw themselves in my struggle. The artists who'd been copied, the creators who'd been dismissed, the dreamers told they weren't enough. Soon, messages began pouring in from other small designers. Some had their work stolen by corporations. Others had been silenced by people more powerful than them. They reached out to thank me for speaking up, for fighting back. And that's when I realized Serene Maid could be more than a fashion line. It could be a platform for others like me. I started mentoring young creators, hosting free online workshops about intellectual property and authenticity. Every Sunday, I'd go live, sewing while answering questions, sharing my mistakes and what they taught me. I didn't want anyone else to go through what I had. Then the media caught on. Articles began appearing with headlines like "The Designer Who Fought Back" and "From Stolen Dream to Global Inspiration." At first I cringed seeing my face next to those words. It felt surreal. But then I understood. This was the story people needed. Proof that resilience could outshine betrayal. Sales grew faster than I could have imagined. I launched a limited collection called Rise, each piece named after a stage of healing. Shatter, mend, ignite, rebuild. They sold out in hours. Customers sent me photos wearing them, sharing how the designs made them feel strong. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about empowerment. Meanwhile, Nathan's company was falling apart. The lawsuits were piling up, the bad press wouldn't die, and investors were vanishing one by one. What had once been a shining brand now looked hollow and desperate. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply moved forward, too focused on my own path to waste time looking back. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in months. Nathan. I stared at it for a long moment. My heart didn't race this time. I didn't feel that sharp stab of anger or betrayal. Just calm detachment. He called again. I let it ring. Then the notification popped up. One new voicemail. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. His voice sounded different, deflated, almost broken. "Serena, Look, I need advice. Everything's falling apart. You were right. I don't know what to do." I listened once, then I deleted it. For the first time since all of this began, I felt peace instead of rage. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was free. A few weeks later, I visited my mother for dinner. She looked older than I remembered, her eyes softer, filled with regret. As we ate, she finally said the words I'd been waiting years to hear. "I'm sorry, Serena. I should have believed you. I let Nathan blind me because I wanted peace in the family, but you never gave up. I'm proud of you." Hearing that should have healed me instantly, but it didn't, not completely. It was bittersweet. Some wounds don't close neatly, but I smiled anyway. "Thank you, Mom. That means more than you know." Back at Serene Maid, things were thriving. I moved operations into a small studio and hired my first team, 4 women, all independent creators I'd met online. And of course, Alicia. She became my creative director, the right hand I didn't know I needed. Together, we built collections that were more personal, more meaningful, and more powerful than anything I'd ever dreamed. Every detail of Serene Maid reflected where I'd come from. The raw edges, the honesty, the growth. We printed tiny messages on every clothing tag, phrases like "made to rise" and "strength woven in." It was our quiet reminder to anyone who wore them. Resilience is its own kind of beauty. Then, one morning, as I was reviewing orders, I got an unexpected call from Vanessa, my lawyer. "Serena," she said, her voice calm but charged, "you might want to sit down for this." I braced myself. "What is it?" "It's Nathan's company. They've officially filed for bankruptcy. Everything's being liquidated. Assets, trademarks, property. It's all going up for sale." For a long second, I didn't speak. My chest felt tight, a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief washing over me. Nathan's empire, the one he built on lies and stolen dreams, was crumbling for good. And then Vanessa added something that made me freeze. "Here's the thing," she said. "Because of your legal filings and public record, you're at the top of the list to make an offer. You could buy the entire brand back for pennies." I set my coffee down, my pulse pounding. The Tamarmir company he stole from me, the one that nearly destroyed my life, was now mine for the taking. That's when I got the call offering me to buy his company's assets for pennies. The company he stole from me was now mine for the taking. When Vanessa told me I could buy Nathan's company, I didn't react at first. I just sat there, staring out the window of my small studio as the morning light hit the rolls of fabric stacked against the wall. The irony of it all felt almost unreal. The same brand that had once erased me was now sitting in bankruptcy court, waiting for someone to claim it, and that someone could be me. A few days later, I walked into the downtown office of the liquidation firm handling Nathan's case. The air inside was sterile, full of the quiet hum of printers and the faint smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. A man in a gray suit introduced himself as Mr. Calloway, the head of the liquidation team. "Ms. James," he said, shaking my hand, "I understand you're interested in the assets of Eterna Industries." Just hearing that name again, Eterna, sent a wave of emotion through me. It was the name I had dreamed up in college, the brand that had once represented everything I believed in, before Nathan turned it into something soulless. I took a slow breath and nodded. "Yes, I want to review everything." We sat in a glass-walled conference room as he slid a thick folder across the table. "Most of what's left are debts and inventory," he said, "but the trademarks, branding rights, and digital assets, they're still intact. Technically, whoever buys these owns Eterna." I opened the folder and scanned the documents. It was strange seeing it all listed in cold legal language. Logos, copyrights, patents, each line representing something that used to belong to me, something he had stolen. "How much?" I asked quietly. He named a figure so small it almost made me laugh. Nathan's empire, once valued at millions, was now being sold for less than what I made in a single month at Serene Maid. I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." The paperwork took hours to finalize, but when I signed the last page, a feeling washed over me that I can only describe as closure. The company Nathan had stolen, the dream he'd tried to erase, was legally mine again. That night, I walked into my studio, pulled out one of my old Eterna sketches from a dusty box, and pinned it to the wall. For the first time in years, I didn't feel pain looking at it. I felt power. I had turned theft into triumph. Within weeks, Vanessa helped me merge the two entities. Eterna was officially absorbed under Serene Maid. My name, my vision, my truth. On paper, it was a business transaction, but in my heart, it was poetic justice. To mark the moment, I decided to make it public. We organized a small press event in the Serene Maid studio. Nothing flashy, just raw and real. Reporters from local and fashion outlets showed up, cameras flashing as I stepped up to the mic. "Years ago," I began, my voice steady but full of emotion, "someone took my dream and tried to pass it off as their own. I was told to stay quiet. I was told to move on. But today, I stand here as the rightful owner of that very brand, because when something is built with heart, it can never truly be stolen." Alicia stood in the back, smiling proudly. Cameras clicked, and for once, the headlines told the real story. "Designer reclaims stolen brand in stunning turn of fate. Serene Maid absorbs Eterna. The power of taking back what's yours. The story went viral within hours. This time, though, it wasn't about pity or scandal. It was about strength. People called it poetic justice, the full circle moment. I received thousands of messages from people saying my story gave them hope. It felt like everything had come full circle. But just when I thought the story had finally closed, my phone rang one evening as I was locking up the studio. The number on the screen made my stomach twist for just a second before I answered. "Serena," the voice said softly. "It's Nathan." I stayed silent. He hesitated before continuing. "I know I don't deserve this, but I need a job. I can't get hired anywhere. No one trusts me anymore. He stopped, his voice breaking slightly. "Please, I'll do anything." For a long moment, I just listened to the sound of his breathing on the other end. A dozen emotions flashed through me: anger, satisfaction, disbelief, and, strangely, a flicker of pity. "I'll think about it," I finally said, then hung up. When I told Alicia about the call later that night, she burst out laughing. "You're kidding? After everything he did?" I smiled faintly, still processing it. "No, I'm not kidding." And that's when it hit me. The perfect kind of irony. The kind of ending you couldn't script better if you tried. And that's when I realized maybe making him my assistant was the best revenge of all. He once took everything from me. Now he answers to me. I never thought I'd see the day when Nathan, the same man who had stolen my dream, lied to my face, and nearly destroyed me, would come to me for help. But there I was, sitting in my office at Serene Maid headquarters, staring at his name on the screen of my phone. It had been a week since he'd asked for a job, and I'd spent every day thinking about it. Part of me wanted to delete his message and move on. Another part of me, the one that had learned the hard way what power really meant, wanted to face him on my own terms. So I called him. When he answered, his voice was hesitant, stripped of its old confidence. "Serena?" "Yes," I said simply. "If you're serious about working, come in tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. sharp." He hesitated. "Doing what, exactly?" "You'll be my assistant." There was a pause. "Your assistant?" "Yes. You wanted a job. I'm offering." "Fun." For a moment, all I heard was his quiet breathing, followed by a forced laugh. "You're serious?" "Completely." He didn't argue. I think he knew he didn't have any other options. The next morning, right on time, Nathan walked through the glass doors of Serene Maid. The air in the studio shifted immediately. My team, Alicia, my seamstresses, the marketing crew, froze mid-task when they saw him. I could practically feel their disbelief. "Everyone," I said, keeping my tone light but firm. "This is Nathan. He's joining us as my personal assistant." Alicia raised an eyebrow so high I thought it might disappear into her hairline, but she said nothing. The first few weeks were awkward, to say the least. Nathan wasn't used to being told what to do, and I wasn't used to seeing him humbled. But he needed the paycheck, and I made sure he earned it. He fetched coffee, scheduled meetings, organized design samples, and handled inventory reports, mundane, tedious tasks that kept Serene Maid running behind the scenes. At first, he fumbled through everything. He missed deadlines, double-booked appointments, and looked completely out of his element. My team whispered about him constantly, unsure why I'd hired him at all. But I stayed calm. I wasn't here to humiliate him. I was here to teach him what real work looked like. I treated him professionally, firmly but fairly. No shouting, no passive-aggressive jabs, just expectations and accountability. If he was late, I docked his pay. If he did something well, I acknowledged it. Slowly, the tone in the office shifted. He wasn't Nathan the thief anymore. He was just another employee learning the ropes. And as time passed, something began to change. He stopped complaining. He stopped trying to charm people or cut corners. He started showing up early, taking notes during meetings, and asking questions about production and marketing. I caught him one afternoon, staring at the sewing team as they worked, genuine respect in his eyes. "I never realized how much goes into this," he said quietly. "I used to think design was just about ideas. I didn't understand how much work it really takes to bring something to life." I nodded. "Ideas are easy. Execution is where character shows." He didn't argue. For once, he just listened. Weeks turned into months, and the bitterness between us softened into something more complicated. Understanding, maybe even empathy. The team still kept their distance from him, but they couldn't deny he was trying. One evening, long after everyone else had left, I found Nathan sitting alone at his desk, looking through an old Serene Maid campaign. He glanced up at me, eyes tired but honest. "You were always better than me," he said quietly. "Not just at this, at everything. I was jealous, Serena. I thought stealing from you would make me successful, but all it did was expose what I really was." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Hearing that from him, the man who had once laughed in my face, felt surreal. "I didn't need you to say that," I finally said. "But I'm glad you did." He nodded. "I'm sorry." And for the first time, I believed him. That night, as I locked up the studio, I realized something had shifted inside me. I no longer wanted revenge. I'd already won. Nathan's apology didn't erase the past, but it gave me something even more valuable: closure. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freedom. For years, I'd carried the weight of what he did, like an anchor around my heart. Now, watching him quietly filing invoices and taking calls, that weight finally lifted. But even as peace settled over me, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There was still one last thing I needed to do. One final act to close the circle completely. Because sometimes, true victory isn't just in forgiving. It's in redefining what the story means. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one last thing I needed to do. I didn't just rebuild my dream. I redefined it. Months after Nathan joined Serene Maid, life had found a new rhythm. The business was thriving, the team had grown, and for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was leading. But deep down, I knew there was one more chapter left to write, one final act that would transform everything we'd built into something bigger than just me. That's how the idea for the Serene Maid Collective Gala was born. A charity fashion event dedicated to supporting young female designers who'd been overlooked, copied, or silenced by the industry. I wanted to give others the opportunity I'd almost lost, to create freely, to be seen, to be heard. The weeks leading up to the event were a whirlwind of fittings, press interviews, and planning. My studio buzzed with energy, models coming in for measurements, interns sorting through fabric samples, Alicia managing creative direction with her usual mix of calm and brilliance. And then there was Nathan. To everyone's surprise, he had become reliable, steady, organized, focused. I put him in charge of logistics for the event, coordinating schedules, managing deliveries, and liaising with vendors. It wasn't glamorous work, but he took it seriously. For the first time, I saw him working with people instead of over them. One night, as we were finalizing the seating chart, he looked up from his laptop and said quietly, "You know, I used to think success was about recognition, but now I see it's about contribution." I smiled. "Welcome to the real world, Nathan." The night of the gala arrived faster than I expected. The venue glowed with soft golden lights, filled with designs from dozens of emerging creators, each one unique, fearless, and deeply personal. The air buzzed with anticipation, the hum of hope. As the final show ended, the lights dimmed, and I stepped onto the stage. The audience, journalists, investors, students, creators, fell silent. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "When I started this journey," I began, "I thought success meant building a dream, but I learned something far greater. That true success means rebuilding yourself when that dream is stolen and using the pieces to lift others higher." I didn't mention Nathan by name. I didn't need to. The people who knew my story understood, and those who didn't could still feel the weight of it. I continued. "What I've learned is that strength isn't about never being broken. It's about what you become after. Every setback, every betrayal, every sleepless night, it all becomes the foundation of who you're meant to be." When I finished, the room erupted in applause. I looked out at the faces, some tearful, some inspired, and felt a deep sense of peace. I had told my story, not for revenge, not for sympathy, but for healing. After the event, as the guests began to leave and the lights dimmed, Nathan approached me backstage. He looked nervous, but there was humility in his eyes I had never seen before. "Serena," he said softly, "thank you. Not just for the job, but for letting me be part of this. You didn't have to forgive me, but you did. And it changed me. I studied his face for a long moment. The old Nathan, the arrogant one, the manipulative one, was gone. What stood before me was a man who had finally learned the cost of integrity. You earned this, I said. Redemption doesn't come from words. It comes from work. You showed up. He nodded, his voice quiet. I'll keep showing up. And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. In the months that followed, Serenmade exploded internationally. Our collections reached Europe and Asia, each line carrying the same core message: authenticity, resilience, renewal. What had started as one woman's fight to reclaim her dream became a global symbol of empowerment. Alicia and I co-founded the Serenmade Foundation, an organization that offered grants and mentorships to independent creators. We hosted workshops, sponsored showcases, and told the stories of artists who refused to give up. The more I shared my journey, the more I realized that forgiveness had been the most powerful act of all. Holding on to bitterness might have fueled my early success, but letting go, that's what made me truly free. My story began with betrayal, but it ended with transformation. Nathan and I would never be the siblings we might have been in another world, but we had found something resembling peace, something shaped by honesty instead of competition. Documentaries, articles, podcasts, they all wanted to tell the story of the designer who took back her dream. But I always corrected them. No, I'd say. He didn't just steal my dream. He forced me to build it stronger. Sometimes I still think back to those early nights in my tiny apartment, the hum of that second-hand sewing machine filling the silence. I had no money, no support, no reason to believe I'd make it, but I did. And maybe that's why I can smile now, even at the past that once broke me. Every morning, Nathan still brings me my coffee before meetings. It's a quiet ritual now. No arrogance, no awkwardness, just mutual respect. And every time he places it on my desk, I smile, not out of spite, but out of gratitude. Because without him, I might never have become who I am. In the end, I didn't just take back my dream. I rebuilt it into something no one could ever steal again. Nathan's betrayal taught me that revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about proving you can rise higher without them. Today, every stitch in my designs carries a piece of that lesson: resilience, truth, and rebirth. And when people ask how I survived losing everything, I tell them this: sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If my story moved you, don't just scroll away. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that broken dreams can be rebuilt. Every like, every comment, every share helps stories like mine reach the ones still fighting to rise. And tell me this: if someone you loved stole your dream, would you forgive them, or would you make them watch you succeed?